anger toward what we call stupid things rarely arises because the world has suddenly decided to inconvenience us. It arises because we have not yet disciplined the inner space that interprets those events. The world remains exactly as it is: imperfect, messy, inconsistent, filled with errors, delays, misunderstandings, and people who act without thinking. Yet we imagine that somehow our irritation will bring order, that our rising heat will correct the flaws of others, that our loud frustration will compensate for their lack of clarity. But anger has never sharpened the mind of another. It has never made the slow move faster or the careless become careful. It has only exposed the fragility of our own discipline. The stumbling of others is not what disrupts our peace. It is the belief that they should not stumble, and that belief is nothing more than a demand we impose on a world that has no obligation to bend to our expectations. To stop becoming angry at trivial or foolish things, the first task is not to manage the world, but to understand the chain of reactions inside us. When something displeasing happens, it is not the event that harms us, it is the meaning we attach to it. A person who cuts you off in traffic has performed a simple action of movement. The universe registers no insult in it, yet your mind narrates it as disrespect, rudeness, provocation, and in believing that story, you ignite your own anger. The person who speaks without thinking is merely expressing their thoughts in the way they know how. Your mind interprets it as stupidity, carelessness, or offense, and suddenly you are battling your own interpretation, not the reality itself. If you can learn to separate events from your judgments, the fire within you will begin to cool on its own, not because the world becomes intelligent, but because you stop demanding that it conform to your preferred shape. Everything begins with understanding that anger is a choice, even when it doesn't feel like one. It doesn't arise automatically from the world, it arises automatically from unexamined habits. Habits can be reshaped by attention. When you pause before reacting, even for a moment, you create space between stimulus and interpretation. That small moment is your liberation. It is where clarity returns. You can say to yourself, this is merely an impression, a thought, a judgment, not an unquestionable truth. The mind can exaggerate, it can distort, it can dramatize. Its first interpretation is rarely the wisest. If you can hold back long enough to witness your emotions as movements within you rather than commands to obey, your anger begins to lose its authority. Ask yourself what exactly you are defending when you get angry at foolishness. Is it your pride, your sense of competence, your belief that you understand the world and others do not? If so, then anger becomes a mask for insecurity. The confident mind does not flare at the incompetence of others. It simply acts with the strength of knowing that foolishness in the world is not a threat to its stability. Anger at stupidity exposes that you are still bothered by what cannot hurt you. An insult cannot injure your character. A clumsy remark cannot diminish your worth. The mistakes of others cannot stain your integrity. The only thing that can do that is your own reaction. When you show restraint, you demonstrate mastery. When you show calm, you become the one who stands above the chaos. The foolishness of others becomes the training ground for your own strength, not the trigger for your weakness. Consider how many of the things that once angered you now seem trivial. Time has a way of revealing which emotions were unnecessary. The same will be true of today's frustrations. What appears intolerable in the moment will eventually shrink into a memory that barely holds weight. If time can reduce the magnitude of your anger, then the anger was never inherent in the event. It was merely inflated by your perception. Instead of waiting for time to cool your emotions, you can apply reason now. Ask yourself whether this moment deserves to control your peace. Ask whether the thing frustrating you will matter in a week, a month, or a year. If the answer is no, and it almost always is, then you have already discovered that anger is not required. The world contains a vast spectrum of intelligence, awareness, and behavior. Some people will speak without thinking, act without preparation, decide without understanding. Some will make mistakes that seem obvious to you, fail at tasks you consider simple, or misunderstand things that appear clear. But remember that you too have been the one who didn't know, who misunderstood, who made an error that someone else found stupid. You did not intend harm, you were simply limited in that moment. If you can recognize your own past limitations with compassion, you can extend that same understanding toward others. They are not here to satisfy your expectations. They are navigating life with the tools they have. If their tools are dull, your anger will not sharpen them. Your calm example has a far better chance of elevating their behavior than your irritation ever will. Every annoyance is an invitation to strengthen your discipline. When someone does something foolish, instead of reacting, tell yourself, "This is my opportunity to practice patience." When someone speaks thoughtlessly, say, "This is my chance to remain composed." When something trivial disrupts your plans, acknowledge, "This is a moment to test my inner order." Life will give you endless chances to lose your temper, but it will also give you endless chances to master it. Transformation happens in these ordinary, everyday encounters. You do not gain strength by reading about it, but by facing the world as it is, and refusing to let it dictate the state of your mind. When you get angry at stupidity, you assume that the world must operate at your level of understanding. But the truth is that everyone has a different background, different experiences, different challenges. What is obvious to you may be completely foreign to someone else. The wise person does not demand uniformity, they adapt. They accept that human beings are varied. They see the chaos of the world not as an insult, but as a natural part of existence. Just as we accept weather without anger, sun, rain, storms, we can learn to accept people in the same way. The storm does not apologize for its nature. The person acting foolishly may not even realize the impact of their behavior. Why should you lose your serenity over something that does not even carry intention? Ask yourself what kind of life you want. One where your emotions constantly rise and fall based on the behavior of others. One where your peace is hostage to the incompetence of strangers. Or a life where your inner state is anchored, unshaken by the noise of the world. You cannot control the intelligence of others, but you can control the clarity of your own mind. You cannot prevent misunderstandings, but you can choose your reaction. You cannot eliminate foolishness from the world, but you can eliminate anger from your response to it. The mind becomes powerful when it learns to endure things without agitation. If you train yourself to stay calm when exposed to minor nonsense, then when life presents you with real challenges, you will be strong enough to face them without collapsing. But if trivial things disturb you, how will you resist when something truly difficult appears? Every small irritation is a test of your resilience. Every moment you choose calm over anger is a moment you sharpen your discipline. Great strength is built through small repetitions. The person who masters their irritation at little things becomes the person who can handle great storms with dignity. You must also understand that what you call stupidity is sometimes simply misalignment. People live according to their own logic, not yours. They prioritize differently, think differently, value differently. What seems irrational to you may make sense to them, within their own limited perspective. Anger arises when you insist that your perspective is the standard of all things. But perspectives differ. The world is not obligated to match your expectations. When you release your attachment to the idea that others must behave according to your standards, you free yourself from endless disappointment. Remember that your anger does not punish the one who acted foolishly, it punishes you. It tightens your chest, clouds your mind, disrupts your focus. It turns you into the one who suffers while the other person often remains unaffected. Why would you choose self-inflicted pain for something that rarely carries real consequence? When you feel anger rising, tell yourself, "This emotion harms me more than the event harms my life." You will find that recognizing this truth weakens the pull of anger. If you refuse to participate in your own suffering, you will stop feeding the emotion that demands your energy. Another powerful method is to remind yourself that everything is transient. This moment, however frustrating, will pass. The person who irritated you will go their way. The mistake that disrupted your day will fade. The words that provoked you will dissolve. If everything passes, why cling to it with emotion? Why give permanence to something temporary? The disciplined mind acknowledges the moment, then lets it go like dust carried by the wind. This practice does not make you passive. It makes you free. It is also wise to consider how many of your frustrations come not from others, but from your own unpreparedness. When you are tired, stressed, rushed, or overloaded, even minor things appear intolerable. Strengthen your routines. Strengthen your body. Strengthen your sense of personal order. A stable life creates a stable mind. When your inner world is managed, the outer world loses the ability to provoke you. What seems like anger at stupidity is often anger at your own lack of balance. By caring for your well-being, you reduce the intensity of your reactions. If you look closely, you will notice that anger thrives in the gap between expectation and reality. The greater the expectation, the more volatile the reaction. Reduce unnecessary expectations, and you reduce unnecessary anger. Expect that people will make mistakes. Expect that things will break. Expect that plans will fail. Expect that miscommunications will occur. This does not mean you accept a life of chaos. It means you accept that chaos is part of life. You can still act to improve the world, but you no longer demand that it be perfect. And when you remove the demand, you remove the suffering. Forgiveness is another discipline. Not forgiveness in the sentimental sense, but the understanding that people are shaped by circumstances you cannot see. They carry burdens, limitations, histories, and wounds. When someone acts foolishly, it is rarely an intentional act of malice. You may be witnessing the result of their struggles, their upbringing, their lack of guidance. If you can remember this, compassion naturally replaces anger. Compassion is not weakness. It is the recognition that everyone is fighting their own silent battles, and foolishness is often the symptom of an untrained or overwhelmed mind. If you would want understanding when you falter, offer that same understanding now. Silence is also a powerful form of mastery. When confronted with stupidity, it is tempting to respond, correct, insult, react. But silence can be the highest expression of control. When you stay silent, you are not suppressing anger. You are withholding your energy from things unworthy of it. Silence protects your focus. Silence denies chaos the satisfaction of your attention. Silence teaches you that not every action requires a counteraction. Not every mistake demands a correction. Not every foolish comment deserves a reply. In silence, you remain sovereign. Imagine yourself as a calm observer rather than a reactive participant. When something foolish happens, instead of judging, simply notice it. Label it gently. This too is part of life. In doing so, you turn frustration into observation, and observation into understanding. You rise above the emotional storm and see the world with clarity. The foolishness around you becomes a distant noise rather than a threat. You respond with wisdom because you no longer see yourself as someone who must fix every imperfection. Also remember that anger blinds you. When you are angry, you lose precision in thought and action. You make mistakes, say words you regret, damage relationships, and diminish your credibility. A single moment of uncontrolled anger can undo years of earned respect. Ask yourself if a trivial event or an unintelligent remark deserves such a cost. The wise person knows that their dignity is worth far more than the satisfaction of an emotional outburst. Restraint is a form of strength that protects you from self-sabotage. When you feel anger rising, breathe. This is not a shallow instruction. The breath is the bridge between the body and the mind. Anger tightens the body, breath releases it. Anger shortens your perspective, breath expands it. A slow breath is a reminder that you choose your pace, not the chaos around you. With each breath, you reclaim control over your internal state. With each breath, you signal to your mind that no external foolishness will destabilize your inner reality. Finally, understand that discipline is not developed in a single moment. It is built slowly through practice. You will not eliminate anger overnight. You will confront situations that test you, and you will occasionally fail. But each time you recognize your reaction, you weaken its hold. Each time you choose calm, you strengthen your character. The goal is not perfection but progress. The person who becomes slightly less reactive each day eventually becomes unshakable. When you commit to this path, you will discover that the world no longer irritates you as it once did. You will move through life with a quiet power, unaffected by the trivialities that disturb others. You will grow patient not because the world is wiser, but because you are. You will stop getting angry, not because stupidity disappears, but because you understand that it never had the power to steal your peace unless you allowed it. And once you learn to guard your peace, nothing foolish, trivial, or thoughtless will ever be strong enough to break it again. There is a deeper truth that becomes clear when you study your anger honestly. What you call stupidity in others is often just the mirror of something unresolved within yourself. When you feel yourself provoked by someone's lack of awareness, it may be because a part of you is afraid of your own imperfections being seen. The mind reacts most aggressively to the flaws it has not forgiven in itself. If you have not accepted that you too can be slow, mistaken, forgetful, or misinformed at times, then the same qualities in others will feel intolerable. But when you understand your own humanity, you stop demanding that the world be anything other than human. There is immense freedom in recognizing that no one is perfect, not even you. This humility softens anger at its roots. Another insight is that anger often arises from speed. When you rush through life, everything that slows you becomes an enemy. Someone taking too long becomes a personal offense. Someone misunderstanding becomes a barrier. But the problem is not their pace. The problem is your lack of stillness. The faster your mind moves, the more fragile your patience becomes. If you slow your rhythm, even internally, you regain control. Stillness is a form of strength. It allows you to remain steady even when the world is chaotic. When you cultivate stillness, the foolishness of others passes by you like wind. You feel it, but it does not move you. You also grow more patient when you realize how small you are in the vastness of existence. The universe does not bend to your irritations. Billions of people live their lives with concerns, limitations, and priorities that have nothing to do with yours. When you zoom out mentally, your frustrations shrink. The person making an error is not part of some personal conspiracy to disrupt your peace. They are simply living their life, unaware of your preferences. This perspective dissolves self-centered anger. You stop interpreting inconveniences as personal attacks and start seeing them as normal parts of a shared world. Strength also comes from recognizing that anger is a loss of direction. It pulls you away from your purpose. Every time you become consumed by the foolishness of others, you waste time, energy, and attention that could be used to improve yourself. You may think you are correcting someone else, but in truth you are neglecting your own growth. Imagine what your life would look like if all the energy you spent on irritation was redirected toward your goals, your discipline, your clarity. You would become unstoppable. The person who refuses to waste energy on foolish things gains a level of power that others cannot comprehend. This is why you must learn to differentiate between things that deserve your response and things that deserve your silence. Not everything should provoke you. Not everything warrants your involvement. There is strength in strategic detachment. If someone behaves foolishly and it does not affect your mission, let them be. If something trivial goes wrong and it does not obstruct your duty, move on. Save your energy for what matters. The world will always provide opportunities to react. Wisdom lies in choosing which ones deserve you. Learning to observe before reacting is one of the greatest practices you can adopt. When confronted with something that triggers anger, pause and ask yourself a simple question. Does this require a response, or am I reacting out of habit? Most of the time, you will discover that your reaction is unnecessary, and when you refrain from reacting, you maintain control. You become the one who decides the direction of your mind, rather than letting impulses drag you through emotional turbulence. It also helps to remember that many things that seem stupid are simply unfamiliar. People operate with different levels of knowledge because they have been exposed to different experiences. If someone lacks skill in something that seems basic to you, perhaps they never had the opportunity to learn. If someone misunderstands something that feels obvious, perhaps they were never taught to think in that way. When you approach others with this understanding, anger transforms into perspective. You see them not as obstacles, but as individuals shaped by circumstances you do not know. And once you recognize this, compassion naturally replaces irritation. Sometimes, anger arises from the illusion of control. You imagine that if others behaved correctly, you would feel calm. But this gives your peace to the behavior of strangers. True control means accepting that you cannot dictate how others think, speak, or act. If you let the intelligence of others determine your emotional state, you will live a life of constant turmoil. Your peace must come from within, not from the environment. When you detach your stability from external behavior, the foolishness of the world loses its power over you. Consider, too, how often anger arises from pride. The belief that you are above certain situations. Pride turns small inconveniences into personal insults. Pride inflates your sense of importance. But when you release pride, you release anger. Humility is the antidote. Humility reminds you that you are not weakened by the mistakes of others. Your worth is not measured by how intelligently the world behaves around you. You are responsible only for your own conduct. And when your character is grounded in humility, you become unbothered by the chaos around you. There is also a discipline in predicting challenges. Instead of being surprised or offended when people act foolishly, expect it, not with bitterness, but with realism. People are inconsistent, people misunderstand, people rush, people forget, people act impulsively, people make errors. If you anchor this truth in your mind, foolishness stops shocking you. When you are prepared, you do not react. You respond with calm. Every day, remind yourself that you will encounter people who act without awareness. When the moment comes, you will already be mentally fortified. You will walk through it with steadiness instead of fire. Furthermore, understand that anger thrives in the imagination. You often construct a story around someone's behavior, assigning motives, assuming intentions, exaggerating consequences. This mental storytelling fuels your emotional reaction. If you learn to stop adding narratives and stick to the facts, your anger dissolves. The fact may be simple: someone made a mistake. The story, however, turns that mistake into disrespect, incompetence, or hostility. If you limit your mind to what actually happened, you prevent unnecessary suffering. Most anger is born from fiction, not reality. When you learn to watch your thoughts as an observer, you discover that anger is not a command but a suggestion. It appears like a cloud passing through the sky. You are not obligated to follow it. You can acknowledge it without obeying it. You can feel its heat without letting it guide your actions. The moment you realize that you are not your anger, you become free from it. You regain your authority, and the world loses its ability to trigger you at will. There is also value in understanding that anger is often a mask for other emotions. Sometimes you are stressed, and foolishness becomes the trigger. Sometimes you are tired, and minor inconveniences feel amplified. Sometimes you are overwhelmed, and simple mistakes appear intolerable. When you look beneath the surface of your anger, you reveal the real issue: fatigue, pressure, fear, insecurity, or unmet expectations. Once you understand the true cause, the anger loses its intensity. You realize it was not the world that upset you. It was something within you that needed attention. Another practice is to develop gratitude for peaceful moments. When you appreciate calm, you become protective of it. You no longer trade it away for trivial irritations. You can remind yourself, "My peace is valuable. I will not give it away cheaply." The foolishness of others becomes unworthy of your inner stability. You begin to value your state of mind more than the urge to react. This shift in priorities strengthens your control. The more you treasure your peace, the less anger can touch you. Learn also the art of stepping away mentally. You do not need to internalize every foolish thing you witness. You can observe it, recognize it, and then release it without carrying it within you. The mind becomes heavy when it stores every irritation. Let it go. Do not replay it. Do not dwell on it. Do not nourish it. Treat it like a passing moment, and it will pass. The world will never run out of irritating things, but you can run out of patience if you cling to them. Freedom lies in letting them flow through you without leaving residue. Finally, understand that mastery over anger is not only for your benefit. Your calm improves the environment around you. When you respond with patience, you prevent conflict. When you act with clarity, you elevate others. When you maintain composure, you set an example that inspires. People trust the calm-minded, follow the steady, and respect the self-controlled. Your discipline becomes a quiet force that influences those around you. Without speaking a word, you teach others how to carry themselves. Without demanding change, you become a source of change. And even in the presence of foolishness, you remain the one who holds the higher ground. If you'd like, I can continue even further or generate an expanded SEO package, timestamps, description, hashtags, or any additional sections you usually request.